Over the years, I've learned to pay attention to my dreams, especially leading up to an event such as this. And recently, I had a dream in which I was attending a large conference, like many Jungian conferences I've attended in the past. It was busy and engaging. I was up in front talking to people and having a great time when suddenly I was stricken with the awareness that I had agreed to take care of an Asian toddler of some friends of mine during this time they were out of town. And as I looked around, I realized the toddler was nowhere to be seen. I was horrified and frantic. I recruited some other people to search, all the time my own horror and dismay growing. Finally, running down some long hallways which seemed interminable, I spied a group of children at the end of the hallway. And as I came up, I saw, in fact, that there were these children, number of different ages, sitting with a woman who was reading them a story. And there was the Asian child, contented, safe, and happy. I awoke. The relief of that moment was such that it woke me out of sleep. So, what a journey of emotion from a state of happy immersion in a group to a stricken horror of something vital missing to growing anxiety until all of a sudden that's broken open with a huge sense of relief. So, my question was, why an Asian child? And here were my thoughts. In the context of this talk, an Asian child may be a symbol of the emerging awareness of a living relation to the inner life so deeply embedded in Eastern cultures for millennia, whether from a Buddhist background or from a Confucian background, from the tantric cremation grounds or the dense black spaces of the dark side of Kali, the great Indian goddess, or the koan marked path towards the no mind of Zen. For our comparatively adolescent Western culture, with its ego inflations around control and technology, it's good to be reminded to sit down and read a story and to receive the good news that the inner Asian child is safe and learning. As an introduction to me, you should know that I too am a child of Asia. I was born in India, son of a second generation Mennonite medical missionary to India. And while I was brought to America while I was still under a year old, my father had grown up in India, spoke Hindi fluently, and inherited his parents' vision of an ideal life goal being that of sacrifice on the missionary field. For him growing up, that had meant separation from his parents for long periods and a very harsh British boarding school education. And while he eventually practiced as a Midwestern eye surgeon, he longed for the ideals of the mission field. And with rise of nationalistic feeling in India, so that it was no longer available for foreigners, and later in life he did stints in Ghana and during the war in Vietnam to help restore sight to the blind. But he struggled with lifelong feelings that he had missed a higher calling to protect his three sons from the parental separation and the corporal punishment dominated experiences of his boarding school years. So I hope our time today may have some story-like qualities and that we keep our eye out for the Asian child that can get lost in the busyness and egocentricity of our Western culture. As part of our work together today, I'm going to invite you to do some inner reflection, and I would like you to have available some paper and writing materials. So I'd give you a moment here to get that if you don't have it. So love, Eros, and emptiness in the 21st century, the Mandala speaks. The psyche is our prime material, our first order of starting point. Everyday consciousness is the raw material. It's a common thing taken for granted, abundant to the point of being regarded as worthless, ordinary, boring. It's even seen as a nullity from the objectifying eye of the statistician or the tyrant. From their perspective, the individual human is just one of a nameless, if however numbered horde, rising and falling generation after generation, important perhaps for census tabulation or counting voters, but not as individuals. This everyday consciousness is where we all start, and often, too often, are marooned. Then consciousness can become something to fill, often desperately. With what? With distraction, compulsion, novelty, workaholism. We need to kill time in its oppressive stalking quality, with its nagging, implicit questions. The standard coping strategy for Western culture to this bind is work hard and play hard. Fill your time with pursuing anything you want to be, or even more pervasively these days, fill it with the ever available world of your electronic device of choice via the internet, YouTube, Twitter, and FaceTime. And as necessary and magical as these portable computers are that dominate our lives, they can help us evade the empty moments of downtime with their begging, persistent questions of who am I really and why am I here? The catastrophic intrusion of the worldwide pandemic has forced this issue from a latent one to a nearly universal one, demanding that we be aware of the shadowy side of Western extroverted culture. These inherent questions, evaded and unaddressed, can accumulate into a haunting sterility. Jung wrote, "You are sterile because, without your knowledge, something like an evil spirit has stopped up the source of your fantasy, the fountain of your soul. If you will contemplate your lack of fantasy, inspiration, and inner aliveness, which you feel as sheer stagnation and a barren wilderness, and impregnate it with interest born at alarm at your inner death, then something can take shape in you. For your inner emptiness conceals just as great a fullness, if only you allow your longing for fulfillment to quicken the sterile wilderness of your soul as rain quickens the dry earth." Writing in 1954, Jung was keenly aware of our insidious default towards numbing sterility in our human makeup. The questions he raises here include, what is this fountain of the soul, and what can stop it up? How are we made aware of this alarm at our inner stagnation, barrenness, and even inner death? How are we to attend to this inner emptiness? How can we allow our longing for fulfillment to quicken the wilderness of our souls and be reunited to this fountain? These are some of the questions that I hope we can address in our time together today.